Welcome to the Hope Dealer Show. I am your host, Kristin Joy Greer. I'm a principal, an author, speaker, artist, leadership coach, actor, and an auntie to one amazing nephew. But overall, I hope to live a life where I have learned to be a hope dealer. I'm so excited that you're listening into this show. I am just more than thrilled to share real life transformative stories of hope and empowerment. I mean, who doesn't need hope, right? We do. And this world, we absolutely need hope. So this is going to be an exciting journey. I'll be sharing my hope-filled journey. I'm going to be interviewing active and engaging hope dealers around this world who are making a difference in our society and within their communities. And more importantly, I hope that this podcast inspires you to be the hope that you wish to see in the world. Let's get ready to go, hope dealers.
Hope dealers, I am so excited to introduce you to one of my good friends, colleague, Principal Tameka Jackson. Principal Jackson, aka Tameka, how are you?
I'm doing well, Kristin. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm so excited to have you on the show. It is just such a privilege to have you. We've been knowing each other for a little over 3 years now, or close to coming to the end of
yes.
it. And I actually got to meet you because you are one of my good friends, but also you are a colleague. We are sister principals.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about what that means, Tameka.
So we are the principals of AIM. You are the principal of AIM 1 in Brooklyn, and I am the principal of AIM 2 in the Bronx.
Correct.
So, yes.
You're telling all our business to our listeners. That's okay. Yeah, we actually are sister principals, and it's so funny because we are non-native New Yorkers, and you're on one borough, you're in one borough, and I'm in another borough, and we have literally been able to do this schoolwork together, this leadership thing together, and I've gotten an opportunity to learn so much about you, which is why I wanted you to come to the show today. As you know, I'm talking to hope dealers around the world, and you are one of the top that came to my mind as someone that just, you just generate hope in the lives of your staff, your school community, and your students. And, obviously we're going through a lot right now. We've been through not one, but 2 pandemics in less than months. And, in these times, people look directly at the leader. Yes. So, I wanted you to come on the show and kind of talk about your experience. So tell me, what has it been like leading through 2 pandemics?
So that's a great question. I would have to say it's a lot. I mean, you said it, starting off, it's a lot. It is a lot of minefields that you have to sort of hop over. It's a lot of balls in the air that you have to juggle. It is... And they don't stop. Like, it feels like it never stops. Every time you turn around, it's something else. I just saw a meme that said, July, please act like you got some sense. Because January through June has been ridiculous. Every time you turn around, it's like a curveball after curveball after curveball. And it just feels like it's something like almost like an avalanche, like reaching you, where you see it's about to just take off, or volcano about to explode. And so I think with the pandemic, both pandemics, it was just a lot coming to a head.
You're absolutely right. I mean, not only can I relate, I can empathize with you. It has been an eventful 4, 5, almost 6 months. And I am just like, I don't know. It's kind of bittersweet, as a leader. It's like, okay, obviously, this is a time where people depend on you the most. But I think personally, it has been a time for just reflection in a deep way. So it makes me think about what's happening, especially the latter pandemic with the racial inequalities on full display. What kinds of reflection have you been able to do? One, as a woman of color, a Black woman serving an inner city school community. What has been going on through your mind?
That's a really good question. And it's funny because I think the first thing as a leader you have to do is really check yourself. Right. So I come from a long history of social activists, and they have started Black-owned businesses, profits, or the political arena. Literally, I remember my mom boycotting a store because they had unfair pricing, and we would be outside with her picket sign by herself, and we would be in the car waiting for her to finish picketing during this time. And so when I see the latter part of this pandemic, it is something where I want to participate. I want to be a part of it. Yeah. I want to act and I want to contribute in another way. But then I also think about the ways that I have chosen to contribute to this racial divide and pandemic all within itself. And that was by getting into education in the first place. Right. I feel like education is the thing that saved me in so many different ways. I'm from Philadelphia. I'm from the inner city. The things that, people are upset about has been going on for years, decades, centuries. And so, as my grandma used to say, there's nothing new under the sun. Right. And so when we're talking about, I think, to answer your question, we talk about these things. I think there's a war inside of me where I'm so excited to see people that are, they're like, enough is enough. And they are out in the streets, and we're in a pandemic, and they're out in the streets. They don't have to call out for work or anything. And it's so diverse. It is people. It is across this nation. It's not just America. It's not just major cities. It's all over London, Asia, just people all over. That's a side of me that's just like, wow. But then there's another side of me. Like, this is the Black woman in me. This is the social activist that's in me. That's just like, why now? Right. Was it because we saw this man die for 8 minutes and 36 seconds? Like, why now? Yeah. When we've been crying out for years, just years. And so there's this, this battle within me. Yeah. That's very grateful, excited to see it. But there's another side of me that's just like, we've been saying this for so long. Mm-hmm. I get why people are upset and angry. So I think I hold both of those things on me. Yeah. You said a lot there. There's a lot to unpack there. I mean, one of the things that, comes to my mind is that you said you are a product, right, of the inner city. And so you're excited not because unfortunately a man had to die and several men and women and children and people have had to die. But because there has been solidarity, there has been a level of, community, if you will, around this topic. I think, just as a principal, I wonder, have you ever had to face, in your role as principalship, any level of police brutality or racial inequalities? So it's funny. I would have to say in principalship, yes. In education, yes. Mm-hmm. So it looks different, right? Police brutality there, and I know you can attest to this. There are times when the police come to the school, they don't have warrants. It may say Jane Doe on the warrant, and they say that a student fits the description. What does that mean? And so they are looking for someone that they heard about, and they have not gone through the proper procedures and protocols that they have, that the law has been set for them, right? And so for me, that's a brutality in itself. I've had students come to school because they have been beat up or targeted, right? I've had students leave our school and have been targeted and or detained. As a principal, I've had a student that was arrested, and instead of him going to booking, he stayed in the paddy wagon for almost all of the day. Yeah. And we were trying to figure out where he was, what was happening. And again, this was purposeful. Now, was it based off of race? We can assume, my school is in the South Bronx, right? So majority Latino and brown. Like, that's literally my school is up in half and half, right? Black and brown. And so there's a level of this where I think where people are like, well, everything is not race. And it's just like, but prove that it's not. This doesn't happen in other neighborhoods. Right. So why is it happening
Yeah. Yeah.
Here, right? Why are, the police so heavy in here, over policing, and why are our students being targeted? Now, we serve an older population, but I also have an experience when I was 17, and my three brothers were targeted, and they put them in the paddy wagon, and for no reason, because they fit the description, because they had on white t-shirts and jeans, right? And so it's this notion of just like, what description? Now, on the flip side, we're principals, right? So we know we a lot of times have to be judge and jury of situations. And so there's another side to that. As a principal, where it's just like we have to make we're hoping that we're making the right calls, and we want to do best, by our students and the people that we serve. But I think a lot of this, this sort of inequality and this unrest is coming from a place of where you don't put your neck, you don't put your knee on somebody's neck for 8 minutes. That's purposeful. You ever try to do crunches for 8 minutes, or ever try to, do squats for 8 minutes? It feels like, like you're about to die.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about doing something strenuous like that for 8 minutes, that's purposeful. It is on purpose, and it's for a reason.
Right.
So that's a different level.
Yeah. I mean, even just you talking about it, and in New York, just to kind of fill in the audience, in our schools, because we're a public school, even though we serve students of a charter backing, we have something in our buildings called school safety agents, who are a school division of the police department, the New York Police Department. And I have had really amazing relationships with the main school safety agents in my school building, but I have also had some school safety agents that have not yielded to the most prosperous relationship with our students and with our family and even with our staff. And I know you have also, been in that situation. And so there's a jurisdiction, we have these agents that are there to protect our students and to support them, but then they also have a hierarchy. Whereas when you're talking about the police coming into the building, I too have actually almost been arrested because, officers came into the building looking for a student that was a minor. And I'm following the law. The law actually gives me permission to not have that student speak with the officer without their parent being notified and without a staff member. And this particular officer was very aggressive with me. And, I actually got a call. I have some friends down at the precinct. And I got a call letting me know that they're coming back and they're going to arrest me because they said that I was harboring a fugitive. A fugitive?
Right.
I mean, when you think about like, these are children at the same time. And yes, they're adolescents. And yes, crime is a part of these different communities that we serve. Also, communities that I grew up in. I'm from Chicago. I'm from the west side of Chicago. I'm from K-Town. Like, if you know Chicago, you know that is a very, very challenged area, right? But what I don't appreciate is, our students, if they're in a place of learning, to be treated like fugitives. And I think that language is harmful.
Exactly.
And so, I think about our responsibility. See, these are the things that a lot of people may not see. They see a principal, but, we also have to kind of be a protector. So, thinking about your role and what you had to face, now we've been out of the building. And so I know that this idea of racial inequality and police brutality in the building is not something that's prevalent. What are some of the things that you would say your students have faced being out of school? Like, what are some of the things, not even that you would say they face, what are you concerned about that they're facing?
I am super concerned because one of the things that I think is a strength for both of our schools is that we build quality relationships with our students, right? I was just on a post commenting on something that was happening with an assistant principal here in New York. And I, was reflecting and thinking about how long it takes us to build these relationships. They usually literally over a year where we have to spend time with students to literally undo the work that some of the other educational institutions have have placed upon them, and the thing that they've walked away from. They don't want to go to school. They don't trust people. They don't trust the administrators. They don't trust the teachers. Nobody's for them. They can't read, but they'll never let you know. They would rather act out than read, right? And so you have all these things that you literally have to tackle. You literally have to undo. And this is, where we have the social emotional curriculum and really trying to infuse that within our schools. And so what I'm concerned about is the lack of structure in that, right? So we have somebody at the door, just like anyone does, right? We have somebody at the door assessing our students when they come into the door. How are they? If they're not good, they're letting other people in the building know, hey, X, Y, and Z is happening. Our counselors are informed. Our advisors are informed. The admin team is informed. And so we know how to deal with this student, right? But when you don't have that connection with them, when you don't have that one-on-one with them, you're not able to necessarily assess that when they're in their environment, which we don't know what that environment is. You're not necessarily able to assess that. They can easily cut off the phone. They can easily not pick up the phone. And we call every day. There are multiple people calling throughout the week, right? And so I'm fearful because a lot of times we do serve as buffers between law enforcement, parents, and even other agencies outside of the school, gangs, and all of that, which is very real and live in New York. We serve as a safe haven, for many of our students. And with them being out there in the streets like that, I have great concerns, right? Because there is no buffer. There, even from their social, emotional, their health and their well-being, their mental health, right? Students, we've had, students on suicide watch and all types of stuff where if we're not there, then who is there? And so I think it's, I have great concerns across the board with them and not having access to them, but we're trying to, reach them on Instagram. We, have our own little, huddle in our social media site. We are emailing them. We are sending them letters. We are, hosting all types of Zoom sessions and fun sessions but I'm very concerned.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit it on the nail, right? Like systematic racism is what you're describing. Like this is the reality of what happens in the school system. And I really wanted to bring you on the show today because one, I wanted to unveil what actually happens, from the principal vantage point of being, the person in charge, as people say, the person responsible and the person that has to protect, and so thinking about sometimes we have to actually protect against outside forces and what goes on here, right? For our educators, for our families, and most importantly, our students. When I think about where they are right now, in a pandemic with COVID-19, keeping everybody on this quarantine, I think about the fact, as you mentioned, like a safe haven, a place for students to go. But also I think about this element of relationship that holds students accountable to their success and accountability of hope for their future, And I think about the fact that, we have now been forced due to COVID-19 to kind of get a little innovative, with the way that we structure our communication, our outreach, the way that we ensure students are supported. If people don't know, we serve one of the hardest and toughest populations in New York City because we serve students who were once deemed dropouts and students that needed a second opportunity and another opportunity. And oftentimes what happens is that we become conditioned to operating under a systematically racist institution. And I'm not just speaking of the educational institution, but the institutions that we were actually born under, right? And so if you were raised a certain way or you lived in a certain neighborhood, you may be more prone to attitudes and perspectives. And so it's a lot of, as you said, undoing, but there's also a lot of forming that actually kind of needs to happen. And so, I think about what has it been like, given the fact that we are in a pandemic, regarding COVID-19, how have you been able to lead a school through all of this? And specifically through something that you have not seen?
I think one of the things that is or has been important for me, and I think we mentioned earlier, was around the sense of community, right? As a young principal, And I've been in this industry for about 16 years now, and the industry of alternative education. It is something, it's one thing I think I always say is one thing to be, in something, it's another when all the responsibility is on you, right? So people are looking for answers. People have lots of questions, more questions than there are answers to. And I think, as somebody that, wants to be prepared, it has been really hard to lead people in waiting for answers from our officials, from the government, from whatever networks, whatever that is for us. And so I think one of the things that I do try to lean on principals, other schools, I have schools in the building that have been really helpful for me with their wisdom, with their structures. They've been in the principalship seat for 14 years, 25 years, going on 30 years. And so they just have a wealth of knowledge that I really try to tap into. I also, really try to make sure I'm listening to what people are saying. Mm-hmm. My team, they like me, they wanted to do something. And so you and I came together. We had our schools come together to sort of like, let's talk about this, right? We brought them back together again, to have a day where they were able to talk about it, to able to plan around it, and then also able to have some fun. Right. Because I think sometimes in this, and when we get like this, it's just like, well, it's just work, because it's like a pandemic. We're supposed to be on alert all the time. And it's just like, calm down, like sometimes we do just have to be in community with each other, and just like knowing that you're on the other line or you're a Zoom away and you understand how I'm feeling. Yeah. Sometimes it's like what you need, or we're able to play a game and it's just like, okay, that was hilarious. I really, really needed to laugh. Yeah. But I think what I've tried to do is just listen, because people are saying things, and a lot of times people aren't saying things, but it's listening and reading in between the lines. Like, what do they need? Right. What do they need? When this thing first started, the first thing, that came up was like, okay, we're asking people to work from home, and not just work from home. Work from home. They have to be wives. They have to be husbands. They have to be mothers and fathers, all while working from home at the same time. It's not just their home working. They're home with everybody. So we try to think, how can we accommodate them? What does that look like? Do we need to buy them an office chair? Do we need to buy them, a mouse or, a table that they can put their laptops? And so just thinking outside of the box, like, what do people need in this moment? And sometimes they need to know that people see them and that they care. So I think that's one of the things I've tried to do, is a variety of things, but also more importantly, listening.
Yeah. I mean, Principal Jackson, you have shared so many wisdom nuggets that I think I want everyone to make sure that they heard that. First, you talked about how important it is for a leader to be innovative, and to really think outside of the box and use your innovation to propel collaboration. So using your voice, your ideas, your creativity to now connect with others who have either gone the road or gone the distance, whether that is through a traumatic experience or just has experience. So you can bounce ideas. And I think that's important. I always talk about community and how important the right community is in helping you, further along. But then you said something I thought was powerful that a lot of people may not consider. One is that, as a leader anywhere, no matter where you are, you don't have all the ideas. You don't have all the answers, and you definitely cannot read minds. Mm-hmm. And so you said listening as the third wisdom nugget, like having to be an active listener, reading between the lines, hearing what people say and what they don't say. I know specifically for you, I was very impressed at how reflective and aware and vulnerable you were as a school leader with your team around COVID-19. You had, I think it was somewhere around 60% of your staff had been affected by COVID-19, and then not even including your students and your families. So I think about how as a leader, you had to kind of take on a different persona. You have to be a more evolved, refined, refreshed leader during this time, and so can you share any leadership lessons that you've learned through both pandemics, not just COVID-19, but also through this more recent resurgence of racial inequality in America?
I think one of the things that you really have to do is you really need to check in with self first. Both pandemics, like you have to check in with self. You have to understand what your goals are. You have to understand what you're trying to model. I think that's something that I keep at the forefront. And so I think one of the things that I always try to model is being calm, right? And so, one movie, a romance comedy, but the one woman, she, the plane was going down and the passenger was just like talking to the pilot. She's like, "Why are you so calm?" And she's like popping Xanax. She's like, "Why are you so calm?" He's like, "What do you want me to do?" He was like, "What do you want me to do? Yell like, oh crap, we're about to die," And, he was like, and I always thought that was hilarious. It was Harrison Ford. I always thought it was hilarious, but I also still use that 20 plus years later.
Yeah.
Because that's what I think about a leader. A leader doesn't have the luxury to sort of like throw up their hands and be like, "We're gonna die." Like, It's just like, you need to come up with a plan. The great thing I liked about Cuomo when this thing first happened is he was just like, "Listen, here's my plan. It may not be right. It may not be the best plan, but with the information I have, this is how we're going to." I feel like that's the thing for me that I would, whether it's the leader of your life, the leader of a school, the leader of your small business, the leader of your family, is with the information that I have. This is what I've decided to do, and this is what we're going to move for, and not making any apologies for it, but this is what I have, and this is the plan. This is what we're going to do. Period. Right. And so I think it's checking in with self, right, and so that's collecting all of your personal data, checking in with self, checking in with your other people, listening to what they're saying, and then making an informed decision, sticking by that decision. And if you need to revise that, gather some more data yourself, people that you're serving, and then and then adjust as you need to. I think another thing, mentioned it before, is it's okay to be wrong. Like it's okay. And I mean, I had to go back to my team. We started something in the beginning of the pandemic, and then we had to go back and say, "Oh, you know what? That's not right. We need to revise that." And it's just like, I want my people to see that I'm not going to we're going the wrong way, and I'm going to keep going the wrong way because I just want to be right. Because this is not about me. This is about me guiding this team, right? It's just like, we're going this way because I said we're going this way. That doesn't make sense, right? So, and I think this goes back to your goal. Like, what is your goal? Is your goal to take this school, to lead them out of this pandemic so they can get to safety or dry land, whatever that is? Like, if that is the goal, that means it's okay for me to be wrong. That means I need to get on the correct course and recalculate, like the GPS says, and get on the right course and say, "Come on, y'all, I found the right course. We're going to get on it," right? And that, like, I feel like that's leadership. And that's also being vulnerable enough to say, well, I made a mistake, right? Because I think that's one of the things I really appreciated about Cuomo is, even if it was the wrong decision, he said, "I own it." And that I think that's the thing, right? I'm willing to be like, "Okay, Cuomo, you said we need to, be 6 feet apart. Then I'm going to trust the data that you presented to us, because you said that this may not be the answer, but this is from what I know. This is what I'm going to, I'm going to say that we're going to do with Matilda's Law." Okay, right? I can accept that, and I think that's what people are looking for when thinking about leadership. And so that, no matter what you're leading, even if that's your family, right? It's just like, okay, dad or mom, like, this wasn't the best choice. We shouldn't have moved to this neighborhood. All right, then let's recalculate. What do we need to do? So I think it's a range of things when thinking about that. But I think it starts with you first.
Right. Wow. That's so powerful. I mean, you definitely hit some very key points. I love this idea of checking in with yourself. Because I think, if you don't know where you are, you can get caught up in the cyclone and the storm and find yourself in a place. Whether you consider everyone to be a leader, no matter if you're leading your own life, no matter if you're leading your job at a job, you are leading your family, you're leading yourself in a direction. And I also consider leadership to be a 4-way street, not a 2-way, but a 4-way street, where you're a servant and you're
not too okay,
missionary and you're a guy. Yes. And so no matter where you are, no matter where you're leading your life, you know, I think Tameka kind of shared some very important things. Check in with yourself in the midst of a trauma, not just a pandemic, all the time. I think these are practical steps. But then she also stated to check in with others, check in around you, what's happening, what's going on. And then I love this, make an informed decision based on what you gathered. So after you checked in, make the best decision for your life, make the best decision for your team or for your school, for your community or for your family. And be willing to be honest about making mistakes, be willing to be open and vulnerable. And I think, you know, Tameka, you basically have given so many tools for our listeners, you know. And so I just want to get your opinion. You know, I think we've definitely covered a lot of territory today. What do you predict will take place in schools across America now that these two things happen? Just in general, you know, we've had this uprising racial unrest, and then we've had this virus that has plagued and taken the lives of many people and continues to be a challenge in year 2020 in America and across this nation. What do you think, though, will happen to schools across America?
I think that people will take science a little bit more seriously. I often think students don't think science is something that they need to focus on because they're not going to be scientists. I think people will take it a little bit more seriously. I think schools will start to look at, I mean, we know this, but schools are going to have to look at what works and what doesn't work when thinking about the mode of instruction and how we are instructing our students. So whether that's on a virtual platform, whether that's on a staggered schedule, whether that's morning, afternoon, evening classes, like we're going to have to look at what educational technology, I mean, and so my master's degree is in educational technology. We've been talking about this for years, right? But this is like sort of like the time where it literally, you had no choice. It had to kick in. Whatever that was, like the mold had to kick in. And so I think for some people that were in that field, where it's just like people sort of got away from it because they're like, the data shows it doesn't work. You know, and so like there was a whole thing about that. And so like now people are going to be very much in tune to that. I think for the racial piece, you know, I don't know how many emails I received about Black Lives Matter and this and that. I think what I would hope to see, I don't know if I would predict this, but what I would hope to see is that people put action behind those words. Like people putting action behind that hashtag. Black Lives Matter is not to exclude anyone. This is not the time for all lives matter. Like this is not the time for that. The point is Black Lives Matter because they have not mattered, right? So what does that look like? What does that look like at our schools? What does that look like in our businesses? What does that look like on our teams? What does that look like in our networks, in the government? What does that look like? It's bigger than painting it on the street. It's bigger than sending an email talking about how you support it. It's bigger than that. It is looking at how systemically Black people have been ostracized. They've been silenced. They have been ignored. Again, as a Black woman, I've sat in rooms where I'm like, nobody heard what I said, even though I was speaking, right? And I was speaking English. Like nobody heard it. And so I've been there, right? And it shows up in different ways. Fit for culture, you know, like just hiring. What does that look like? And addressing it. That's what I would like to see. I don't know if it's a prediction. It is a hope that I have, since it's hope dealers. This is a hope that I have, is that we will see change. Like people not being on a defensive about it, but people like, you know what? You're right. This is a pink elephant in the room. And I'm not talking about go to a Black person and talk about race. I'm talking about when you do something about it. Like it's in the moments where you see it playing out and we say nothing. That's real. Issue. Even at my school, right? So like if the police is coming in and they're doing whatever, you know, like you say, you almost got arrested. Same thing. My superintendent had to talk me off a ledge one time because I'm just like, this is not okay.
Right.
In the same way where we stand up for our kids is the same way that people need to stand up when you see it happening, and it happens all the time. And I think when you have more people speaking out about it and
right.
people addressing it, even in the rooms that we will never be in, right? And really doing something about it. That's how we make change. That's how we change lives. That's when people are being intentional about it and ignoring it and acting like
it didn't happen.
Everything's about race. It's bigger than that. Right. It's so much bigger than that.
Yeah. Wow. Principal Tameka Jackson, I am just so thankful that you just shared your amazing, thoughts of hope, of your lessons that you've learned in 2 pandemics. And I love how you ended us on, addressing the purple elephant in the room. As much as it's difficult for us to talk about, will Black Lives Matter across schools in America? I just want to thank you for being a hope dealer and for being on this show with me. And tell me, what are you currently working on and where can people find you?
So besides school, I also am a writing coach. So I help writers develop their work. I am also a publishing service. So I can be found at TamekaJackson.com. That's TAMEKA Jackson.com. I have a lot of things going on. I have a podcast called Yeah, You're Right. That's my coaching podcast. And I also have another podcast with my brothers that's sort of like laid back and relaxed, and that's called Questions at the Dinner Table.
Wow. Principal Jackson, you are doing it all. You're an author, you're a speaker, you're a coach, you're a writer. I don't know how you do it all, plus be a principal, but I get to see it up close and personal. Again, I want to thank you. We're going to hope to see you. Check out that podcast, Yeah, You're Right, and Questions at the Dinner Table. And you can also check out Principal Jackson. I will drop the link below so you can follow her on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, and you can go to her website. And if you're interested in writing or being a published author, please sign up for one of her online courses. Principal Jackson, thank you for being a hope dealer. I truly, truly appreciate it. And I want to end with telling all of our hope dealers, in this experience that we are facing, we are often put up to a challenge as leaders, as people where we are leading our own life, our own communities, our own families, and we all have the opportunity to bring hope, share hope, and give hope. I'm Kristin Joy Greer, and I just want to say, don't forget to be the hope that you wish to see in the world. Take care, hope dealers.